11-year-old Zara Johnson has been selling handmade beaded bracelets at the corner market for 6 months, turning every dollar into her mother's medical bills. Her mother, Keisha, battles a chronic illness that drains their savings faster than hope can rebuild them. When a mysterious biker stops to buy every bracelet Zara has, 43 of them, he asks one simple question: "What's the story behind these?" That question changes everything. Within 24 hours, 70 members of the Iron Cross MC arrive at their modest home with something neither Zara nor Keisha expected. A promise kept from 15 years ago, a debt of honor that transcends time, and a chosen family that refuses to let a child's sacrifice go unwitnessed. What begins as a girl's desperate love for her mother becomes a testament to loyalty, redemption, and the quiet power of those who remember. The morning sun hadn't burned through the fog yet when Zara Johnson laid out her bracelets on the weathered wooden cart her grandfather had built. 43 of them today, each one a small act of defiance against the weight crushing her family. She threaded the last bead with trembling fingers, purple and gold, her mother's favorite colors. Keisha had whispered those words from her bedroom yesterday, voice thin as paper. "Purple and gold, baby, like royalty, like we still got dignity." Zara had stayed up until midnight, adding those colors to every bracelet she could manage. The corner of 5th and Morrison wasn't glamorous. It was where the city's edges frayed, where single mothers caught the bus to their second shifts, where teenagers cut class to smoke behind the laundromat, where hope moved slowly. But it was where people stopped. They stopped because Zara's bracelets weren't just thread and beads. Each one held a story, a color choice, a pattern that meant something. She'd started this 6 months ago, after her mother's diagnosis. The word itself felt like a curse: lupus. Keisha's immune system had turned against her, attacking her own body like an internal betrayal. The treatments were expensive, the co-pays were relentless. Her mother had tried to hide the stress, but Zara heard her crying at night, heard the calculator clicking in the dark. So Zara started making bracelets. She saved her allowance. She asked neighbors for spare beads. She watched YouTube tutorials on her school library computer during lunch period, fingers learning to braid, weave, and secure the threads with precision. What started as distraction became obsession, and obsession became purpose. "How much for one?" A man's shadow fell across her cart. Zara looked up. He was tall, maybe 50, with grey streaking his dark beard. His leather cut, the kind only certain men wore, was patched with club insignia. Iron Cross MC. She'd seen them around the neighborhood on Harley-Davidsons that sounded like thunder. They weren't the kind of people who usually stopped at her cart. $5, Zara said quietly, "or 2 for 8. The man smiled. Not the fake kind. The real kind that reached his eyes. He picked up a bracelet, red and white, her most recent work. "These are good, kid. Real good." He examined the stitching. "How long you been making these?" 6 months, Zara said. He set the bracelet down carefully and looked at her directly. Why? It was a simple question, but something in his tone made her feel safe telling the truth. "My mom's sick," Zara whispered. "The medicine is expensive. I'm trying to help." The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Zara didn't expect. He turned to his cart and began gathering every single bracelet, all 43 of them. His hands moved with purpose, stacking them gently into a leather bag he pulled from his jacket. "I'll take all of them," he said. Zara's eyes widened. "All of them?" "All of them," he repeated. He pulled out his wallet and counted out $400 in cash. He placed it in her small hands, bills that felt impossibly heavy. "What's your name, kid?" "Zara. Zara Johnson." The man nodded slowly, as if committing it to memory, as if her name meant something. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Webb." He paused, then added quietly, "Your mom, what's her name?" "Keisha. Keisha Johnson." Marcus looked at Zara with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously terrified and protected. "You tell your mother that Marcus Webb stopped by. You tell her that the debt is being paid. You understand?" Zara didn't understand, not at all. But she nodded anyway. Marcus mounted his Harley and rode away, the engine's roar fading into the city noise. If you've ever wondered what happens when a stranger remembers a promise made years ago, keep watching, because tomorrow everything changes. Keisha Johnson was having a bad day, the kind that started before dawn and didn't let up. Her joints ached, her head pounded. The medication made her nauseous, but not taking it made everything worse. She lay in bed, watching the ceiling fan rotate in slow, hypnotic circles, trying to conserve energy for the evening shift she wasn't sure she could work. The knock on the door came around noon. She heard Zara's voice first, high and excited, followed by the deep rumble of a man's voice. Keisha's protective instinct fired immediately. She pulled herself up, steadied herself against the nightstand, and made her way to the living room, moving slowly to hide the limp the pain forced into her stride. What she found stopped her cold. A man in an iron cross cut stood in her living room. Behind him, visible through the open door, were motorcycles. Dozens of them. The street outside her modest house was lined with Harley-Davidsons, their chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. "Keisha Johnson?" the man asked. His name tag read, "Prophet." "Yes," she said, her voice barely steady. "What's happening?" "We're here because of a promise," Prophet said, "and because Marcus Webb doesn't forget." The name hit her like a physical blow. Marcus Webb. She hadn't heard that name in 15 years, not since the night everything changed, not since the night when Marcus and her late brother, David, had made a pact under the stars, a promise that if anything ever happened to one of them, the other would take care of their family. David had been killed in a car accident 7 years ago. Marcus had disappeared into the biker world. And now he was here. "I don't understand," Keisha whispered, but her eyes were already filling with tears because some part of her, some deep, ancient part, understood perfectly. Prophet stepped aside, and through the door came more members of the Iron Cross MC, 30 of them, 50, more still arriving, parking their bikes with ritual precision, removing their helmets with the solemnity of a ceremony. One of them carried a box, then another and another. "Medical supplies," Prophet explained. "Medications your insurance won't cover. Treatments your doctor recommended but said were too expensive." He paused. "Marcus made sure we took care of it. All of it. For as long as you need it." Keisha sank into a chair. Zara moved to her side, small hand gripping her mother's trembling fingers. "Why?" Keisha asked. "After all this time, why now?" "Because your daughter sold 43 bracelets to Marcus yesterday," Prophet said quietly. "She told him her mother was sick. She told him she was trying to help." He looked directly at Keisha. "Marcus said that's exactly what David would have done. That's exactly what your brother's spirit demanded." The Iron Cross MC stood in silent witness, 70 men and women strong, filling the small house with the weight of kept promises and brotherhood that transcended time itself. Keisha pulled Zara close and wept, not from pain, but from the sudden, overwhelming knowledge that they had not been forgotten. "And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you." The Iron Cross clubhouse smelled like motor oil, leather and coffee that had been brewing since dawn. Marcus Webb sat in the corner, weathered hands wrapped around a mug, his eyes distant with memory. Prophet pulled up a chair. They'd ridden together for 12 years, and Prophet knew the signs of a man carrying ghosts. "You want to talk about David?" Prophet asked. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he began. "We were kids, 12 years old, maybe 13. My father..." He paused, jaw tightening. My father was not a good man. He drank, he hit, he made life hell for anyone in his radius. Marcus stared into his coffee. One night, he came after my mother. Broken bottle. Rage. I was too small to stop him. Prophet didn't interrupt. David Johnson was my neighbor. Didn't even know him that well, but he had a baseball bat and he had courage. He ran across the yard and he stood between my father and my mother. Took a hit meant for her, bled, but he didn't back down. Marcus's voice dropped lower. My father ran. He was a coward beneath all that violence. He ran and disappeared, and he died 10 years later in a drunk tank 2 states over. But David saved my mother's life that night. He saved mine too, because if my mother had died, I would have followed her. So you made a promise, Prophet said, under the stars, both of us bleeding from that night. We said, whatever comes, we remember this. Whatever happens, we take care of each other's families. We don't forget. Marcus set down his mug. 7 years ago, I heard David died. Car accident. Wrong place, wrong time. I was deep in the life then, Prophet. I was running drugs. I was angry. I thought about finding David's family, but I was ashamed. I was ashamed of what I'd become. I told myself I'd broken that promise just by breathing the life I was living. But you didn't break it, Prophet said quietly. No, Marcus agreed. But I should have moved faster. Should have found them sooner, should have made sure they were okay. Prophet leaned back in his chair. You did now, he said. An 11-year-old girl, selling bracelets in the rain and sun to help her sick mother. That's David's blood. That's David's heart. And you recognized it. Marcus nodded slowly. I recognized it, he repeated. And I remembered. Sometimes that's all we can do. Remember and honor the promise. The debt gets paid forward. Keisha and Zara are family now. The debt doesn't end. It just changes shape. Or comment below if you understand. Loyalty isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up for the people who matter, even when the world thinks you've forgotten. The boxes kept coming for 3 days straight. Medications arrived in refrigerated carriers. Specialist contact information was delivered with handwritten notes. On the house, Iron Cross takes care of their own. A home health aide, a woman named Gloria with kind eyes and capable hands, appeared at the Johnson home with a schedule. She'd be there Monday through Friday, helping with physical therapy, meal preparation, and medical management. The word spread through the neighborhood like gospel. Keisha Johnson's daughter had been blessed by the Iron Cross MC. At Zara's school, kids who'd never acknowledged her suddenly wanted to sit with her at lunch. Mothers who'd walked past her bracelet cart now asked for custom orders. The corner store owner where Zara sometimes shelved supplies offered her a job at higher wages. But Keisha understood something deeper was happening. She sat with Gloria one afternoon while Zara was at school, and the words poured out like medicine from a wound. I don't know how to thank them, Keisha said. I don't know how to repay this. Gloria, who'd been working with the Iron Cross for 5 years, smiled gently. You don't repay loyalty, Gloria said. You honor it. You live. You make sure your daughter knows what it means when someone keeps their word. You keep breathing, and you make your life worth the sacrifice they're making for you. Keisha's eyes filled with tears. Is that what this is? Sacrifice. That's what family is, Gloria said simply. That evening, when Zara came home from school, Keisha was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, something she hadn't been able to do in months. The pain was still there, but it had quieted enough for her to witness the world again. Zara sat beside her mother, and they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Mama, Zara said quietly, what did that man, Marcus, what did he mean about a debt? Keisha took her daughter's hand. Your Uncle David, Keisha began, saved Marcus's life when they were boys. Marcus promised he'd take care of our family if anything ever happened to David. That promise never expired, baby. It lived inside Marcus all these years, waiting for the moment when he could finally keep his word. Is that why he bought all my bracelets? That's why he recognized your heart, Keisha said. He saw David in you, the same courage, the same love. And he remembered that promises matter, that family matters, that taking care of people is the most important thing we can do. Zara leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, and for the first time in months, Keisha felt something other than fear when she thought about the future. 3 weeks into the arrangement, a problem arrived wearing a badge. The social worker, a woman named Patricia Hornsby with a clipboard and a cold expression, showed up at Keisha's door without warning. She had concerns, she said, concerns about the source of the medical supplies, concerns about why a motorcycle club was inserting itself into a vulnerable family's affairs. Keisha felt her stomach drop. The medications are legitimate, Keisha tried to explain. The doctor prescribed them. The Iron Cross is simply helping me afford them. Which raises questions, Patricia said, making notes, about the nature of the relationship, about potential exploitation or coercion. Patricia's eyes were suspicious, calculating. She was looking for a story that made sense to her, a story of predatory men with ulterior motives, of a single mother being manipulated. She wasn't looking for the truth. Word reached Marcus within hours. Prophet appeared at Keisha's door that evening with 4 other Iron Cross members. They were quiet, professional, and absolutely clear about what would happen next. "We're going to make sure this is handled properly," Prophet said. "We've worked with social services before. We have documentation, we have records, we have Marcus's testimony about his relationship with your brother, and we have something else." He pulled out his phone and showed Keisha a recording. It was Gloria on video, describing Keisha's medical condition, her progress, and her absolute refusal to accept any help unless it was legitimate and above board. Gloria testified, with clinical precision and genuine care, about Keisha's improvement, about how the medications had changed her quality of life, about how Zara's anxiety had decreased now that her mother wasn't in constant crisis. "The social worker is going to get all of this," Prophet explained, "and she's going to understand that the Iron Cross MC takes families seriously, that we don't exploit people, that we honor old promises, that your family is protected legally and morally." 3 days later, Patricia Hornsby returned. This time, she brought a report, one that cleared Keisha completely. She apologized, formally and with visible discomfort, for the misunderstanding. But before she left, she made eye contact with Keisha and said something unexpected. "I've been doing this job for 17 years, Patricia said quietly. "I've seen a lot of cruelty. I've seen a lot of abandonment. But I rarely see this. People who keep their promises to the dead by protecting the living." She paused. "You're going to be okay, Miss Johnson. These men, they mean it." After she left, Keisha sat down and called Marcus. "Thank you," she said simply. "Family doesn't thank family," Marcus replied. "Family just shows up, and we did." The Iron Cross Clubhouse threw a gathering on a Saturday night, something between a celebration and a ceremony. The entire membership was present, 72 men and women, patches earned through years of loyalty and sacrifice. Zara was invited. She'd never been inside the clubhouse before, and what she found surprised her. Yes, there were motorcycles gleaming in the garage. Yes, there were photographs of patches and battles and decades of history, but there was also something else. Photographs of families, children, grandmothers, an entire wall dedicated to members who'd fallen, with dates and names and flowers that someone refreshed regularly. Marcus found her standing before that wall. "This is our memory," he said softly. "This is why we keep our promises, Zara. Because life is fragile, because time moves faster than we think, because the people we love deserve to know they matter." He pointed to a photograph, a young man with a bright smile and kind eyes. "That's David, your uncle." Zara stared at the photo. She could see it now, the resemblance to her mother, but also something else, a gentleness, a strength that wasn't about domination but about presence. "He was a good man," Marcus said, "the best I knew, and when he died, I thought his goodness died with him, but it didn't. It lived in your mother. It lives in you. Every time you tried to help her, every bracelet you made, that was David's spirit moving through you." Zara felt tears on her cheeks. "I didn't know him," she whispered. "You know him now," Marcus said, "because we're going to make sure you do. We're going to tell you stories. We're going to show you what loyalty looks like, and someday, when you're older, you'll understand that promises aren't just words. They're the architecture of meaning. They're what make life matter." Later that night, the entire Iron Cross membership stood as Keisha and Zara were presented as official Iron Cross family, a designation that came with real protection, real community, and real belonging. It was a ceremony older than laws, rooted in something deeper than blood but just as binding. If you've ever wondered what it means to truly belong, you're watching it right now. Like and subscribe to keep following Zara and Keisha's story. 2 months after Marcus showed up at Zara's cart, a sealed envelope arrived at the Johnson home. It was addressed to Zara in careful, deliberate handwriting. Inside was a letter. "Dear Zara, I'm writing this because I want you to understand something that adults often forget to teach, the power of keeping your word. When I was young, maybe a few years older than you, I made a promise with your Uncle David. We were just kids, but we meant every word. We said we would take care of each other's families, no matter what, no matter how much time passed, no matter how the world changed. I broke that promise for 7 years, not because I wanted to, but because I was scared. I was ashamed of the life I'd chosen. I thought I wasn't worthy of being David's brother anymore. Then you sold me 43 bracelets, and I saw David in you. You were willing to sacrifice for your mother. You were willing to stand alone at a street corner day after day, making something beautiful with your own hands because you loved someone. That's what David would have done. That's what David did. So, I'm writing to tell you this. You changed my life. Not because you needed me, but because you showed me what it means to matter. You reminded me that promises don't expire. They just wait. They wait for the moment when someone is brave enough to act on them. I want you to grow up knowing this. The world will tell you that promises are cheap, that people don't matter, that loyalty is a luxury. Don't believe that. Be the kind of person who means what she says. Be the kind of person who remembers. Be the kind of person who shows up. Because when you do that, you create family, real family, the kind that lasts forever. Your friend and your brother in faith, Marcus Webb, P.S. Your mother is going to be okay, but more importantly, you are going to be okay, because now you know something most people never learn. You are part of something bigger than yourself, and that makes you unbreakable. Zara read the letter 17 times that first day. She read it until the words became part of her bones, part of her understanding of what it meant to be alive, to be loved, to be remembered. And for the first time since her mother got sick, Zara Johnson understood that the world wasn't just a place of loss. It was also a place of impossible grace. 6 months after Marcus Webb first walked into Keisha Johnson's life with 70 bikers at his back, the hospital called. Not with bad news. With an opportunity. Keisha stood in the kitchen at dawn, hands trembling as she held the phone, listening to her former supervisor explain that they needed her back. Not full-time. Not yet. But 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. flexible hours, a position that would allow her to work when her body cooperated and rest when it didn't. She hung up and sat down. The medication Marcus had secured was working. The pain had diminished from a scream to a hum, from a presence that consumed every thought to something she could manage, compartmentalize, even occasionally ignore. Her joints still ached. Her energy still had limits, but for the first time in 18 months, Keisha Johnson could imagine a future that didn't begin and end with survival. She called Marcus before she called anyone else. "They want me back," she said simply. She heard the smile in his voice. "I know." "You know?" "Gloria told me," Marcus said. "She also told me you were going to need someone to help with Zara's schedule on workdays. Someone to make sure your daughter has what she needs while you're rebuilding your life." Keisha felt tears gather. "Marcus, I can't—" "You're not asking," he said gently. "You're not asking because you don't have to. This is what family does. We show up, we build, we make sure no one falls while they're learning to stand again." That first Tuesday back at the hospital, Keisha dressed in her scrubs, navy blue with small white hearts embroidered in the corner, a detail she'd forgotten about until she pulled them from the closet. The fabric felt foreign against her skin, like wearing a life from someone else's past. But when she walked through those hospital doors, something shifted. The other nurses embraced her, not with pity, with genuine joy at her return. The patients, the ones she'd cared for before the illness, asked about her specifically during their shifts. And the work itself, which she'd feared might be too demanding, became a form of therapy. There was structure in caring for others. There was purpose. There was the ancient knowledge that being needed was its own form of medicine. Behind the scenes, the Iron Cross had orchestrated her return with precision. They'd reached out to the hospital administration weeks earlier, providing documentation that Keisha's health was stable, her medical needs managed, her readiness genuine. They'd done it quietly, without fanfare, simply ensuring that bureaucratic doors would open for a woman they'd claimed as family. Gloria shifted her schedule to cover the days Keisha worked, arriving at the Johnson home before dawn to make sure Zara had breakfast, had her school supplies ready, had someone to send off into the day with a hug. Other Iron Cross members, women mostly, though not exclusively, created a rotating schedule for after-school supervision. There was Marcus on Tuesdays, bringing groceries and sitting at the kitchen table while Zara did homework. There was a woman named Duchess, a former teacher and Iron Cross member for 8 years, who came on Thursdays to help Zara with reading comprehension and math. The community Keisha had feared would judge her had instead wrapped around her like armor. Meanwhile, Zara's bracelet business had transformed into something neither mother nor daughter had anticipated. The local news picked up the story. A reporter had seen Zara selling at the corner market and had done what reporters do. She'd dug deeper. She'd discovered the Iron Cross connection. She'd interviewed Marcus about the promise. She'd spoken with Keisha about survival and sacrifice. And she'd crafted a narrative that resonated. 11-year-old girl's love for her mother inspires entire motorcycle club. The story aired on a Wednesday evening in late April. By Friday, Zara had received over 500 bracelet orders. Schools wanted to buy them for fundraisers. Corporate offices wanted them as gifts for employees. A boutique in downtown asked to stock her work on consignment. Social media accounts sprang up, some legitimate, some exploitative, but the message was clear. People wanted to be part of something that meant something. Keisha and Zara sat together one evening, looking at the orders spreadsheet that had grown to dozens of pages. "We can't make all of these," Zara said, overwhelmed. "No," Keisha agreed, "but we can choose. We can decide who gets them. We can make this about what matters." Together, they developed a system. Priority orders went to families struggling with medical crises. Hospitals received bracelets for pediatric patients. School counselors got them for children dealing with grief. The surplus income, because there was significant surplus, went into a dedicated account. One evening, Marcus sat at their kitchen table looking at the financial reports. "How much?" he asked. $14,000, Keisha said quietly, "in 3 months." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding immediately what this meant. "You're going to establish a fund," he said. It wasn't a question. "We were thinking about it," Keisha confirmed, "in Uncle David's name, to help other kids like Zara. Kids whose parents are sick, kids who shouldn't have to grow up so fast." Marcus's eyes glistened. "David would have loved this," he said. "He would have loved that his name became synonymous with helping children survive impossible circumstances." The David Johnson Memorial Fund was officially established in June with Keisha as administrator, and a board that included Marcus, Prophet, Gloria, and 2 other Iron Cross members. The mission was straightforward: provide financial support, mentoring, and community connection to children whose parents battled chronic illness. Zara became the symbolic face of the fund, not as a celebrity, but as a reminder. She was featured in all the materials. Her story was told. Her bracelet designs were replicated on T-shirts and coffee mugs that raised additional revenue. But more importantly, Zara understood that her pain had been transformed into purpose. By late summer, the fund had helped 17 families. A 12-year-old boy in Camden received medication support while his father recovered from a stroke. A 15-year-old girl in Trenton got counseling services while her mother fought cancer. A 10-year-old in Philadelphia received educational tutoring while his grandmother, his sole caregiver, managed her own health crisis. Each child received more than money. They received connection to the Iron Cross network. They received the message that they were not forgotten, that their sacrifice was witnessed, that they belonged to something bigger than their immediate crisis. Keisha, meanwhile, had returned to full-time work by August. Her energy had stabilized. Her medication had been fine-tuned to near-perfect efficacy. And perhaps most importantly, her spirit had been restored by the knowledge that she was needed, valued, and capable of more than mere survival. One evening, she stood at the hospital's pediatric ward, and a little girl, maybe 7 years old, with leukemia and a bald head, and eyes too ancient for her face, called out to her. "Are you Zara's mum?" the girl asked. Keisha knelt down. "I am. What's your name?" "Emma," the girl whispered. "I got one of Zara's bracelets from the David Johnson Fund. My mummy cried when it arrived." Keisha felt something shift in her chest, a recognition of how the promise made by 2 boys 40 years ago had rippled outward, touching lives across time and geography, creating waves of grace that would never be fully traced. She touched the bracelet on Emma's wrist, purple and gold, Keisha's own favorite colors, and understood. This was what it meant to be part of a legacy. This was what happened when people kept their word. This was how the dead continued to matter. The 1-year anniversary gathering took place in November, on a Saturday evening that carried the first real bite of winter. The Iron Cross clubhouse had been transformed. Photographs lined the walls, not just of club members, but of the 17 families the David Johnson Memorial Fund had helped. Each family had a story. Each story was sacred. Marcus had spent weeks carefully documenting everything. He'd interviewed families. He'd collected testimonies. He'd created a visual narrative that showed with undeniable clarity how one promise made by 2 boys had cascaded into something immeasurable. David Johnson's photograph occupied the place of honor, a large, framed image from his high school yearbook. He'd been 17, with a genuine smile and kind eyes that transcended the decades separating him from the present moment. Fresh flowers, white lilies and purple iris, sat beneath his photo, replaced weekly by volunteers who'd never even known David but understood the importance of remembering. Beside David's image was a newer photograph. Zara and Keisha, radiant and whole, with Marcus's arm around them both. The caption read simply, "Family forever." The turnout was staggering. All 72 Iron Cross members attended, of course, but so did Marcus's mother, a woman in her late 70s with Marcus's eyes and his quiet strength. She'd flown in from Arizona, and she spent the evening moving through the clubhouse, touching photographs, reading testimonies, weeping openly at the sight of her son's face beside the boy he'd saved him for. Gloria came, bringing with her 3 other nurses who'd worked with Keisha at the hospital. They'd become part of the Iron Cross family network, not through motorcycle culture, but through shared commitment to care. The families, helped by the fund, attended too. Emma, the 7-year-old with leukemia, arrived in a wheelchair, her mother pushing her with tears streaming down her face. She wore 3 of Zara's bracelets, one for protection, one for healing, one for hope. The 12-year-old from Camden came with his father, who stood speechless before Marcus, unable to articulate what it meant to have been remembered when he was at his lowest. But the most significant attendance came from the community itself. News of the gathering had spread. Teachers brought their students, social workers came, clergy arrived, journalists documented. Because what was happening at the Iron Cross Clubhouse on that November evening wasn't just a party. It was a ceremony. It was a recalibration of how the world could work if people chose to make it so. Keisha stood in the kitchen with Gloria, arranging food that club members had prepared: collard greens and cornbread, baked chicken and sweet potato pie. The recipe had come from Keisha's own mother, now deceased, through her sister's memory, making it felt like an act of resurrection. "How are you feeling?" Gloria asked, squeezing Keisha's shoulder. "Alive," Keisha said simply. "Truly, genuinely alive. Not just surviving, living." Zara was in the main room, demonstrating bracelet making to a group of younger children. She'd become something of a mentor. At only 12 years old, she understood that art could be activism, that creation could be healing, that the work of one's hands could change the world. Prophet approached Marcus at one point during the evening and simply said, "You did it, brother. You kept the promise." But Marcus shook his head. "We did it," he corrected, his gaze moving across the room, from Keisha to Zara to Gloria, to the families and the friends and the volunteers and the believers. "This isn't my legacy. This is what happens when a community decides to matter to each other." As the evening progressed, people began sharing testimonies. A mother spoke about how the fund had paid for her daughter's therapy while she recovered from a car accident. A counselor described how Zara's bracelets had become conversation starters with traumatized children, objects that held permission to talk about the hard things. A teacher explained how she'd used the story of David Johnson and Marcus Webb to teach her students about loyalty and the architecture of meaning. Then Emma, the 7-year-old with leukemia, was lifted from her wheelchair by her mother. The room fell silent. "I made a bracelet," Emma said, her voice thin but clear. "I made it myself, with help from Zara. And I made it for David, for Uncle David, because he saved people. And now he's saving me too." She held up a simple bracelet, red and white, the same colors Marcus had chosen that first day, and laid it gently before David's photograph. Not a dry eye remained in the room. Marcus stood with his mother, both of them trembling. His mother squeezed his hand. "Your father didn't deserve the mercy you showed him," she whispered, "by refusing to become him, by becoming David instead." "I became David because David saved me," Marcus replied. "And now David keeps saving us. That's the power of keeping your word, Mom. It doesn't just matter in the moment. It resonates forever." Later, as the gathering wound down and people began departing, Keisha found a quiet moment with Marcus outside, standing in the cold November air. "I wanted to thank you," Keisha began, "but I don't have the words." "You don't need words," Marcus said gently. You're living the gratitude. You went back to work. You're healthy. You're helping other families through the fund. You're teaching your daughter what it means to matter. That's the thank you. That's the legacy continuing forward. Keisha pulled him into an embrace, and for a moment, time seemed to dissolve. There was David Johnson, present in the embrace between his sister and his oldest friend. There was the promise made under stars 40 years earlier, alive and breathing and transforming lives. There was the truth that the world so often tried to deny, that loyalty mattered, that promises transcended time, that love was the most radical act a person could commit to. 6 months later, the Iron Cross MC formalized the David Johnson Memorial Fund as a non-profit organization. Keisha became executive director. Marcus joined the board. Gloria took on the role of community liaison. And Zara, at 13 years old, became the public face and spiritual heart of an organization that would eventually help hundreds of families across 3 states. The fund received grants. It attracted donors. It was featured in magazines and documentaries, but more importantly, it became a blueprint, proof that a single act of remembering, a single choice to honor a promise, could fundamentally alter the trajectory of lives. Years later, when Zara was a college student studying social work and non-profit management, she would often stand before audiences and tell the story. Not as a victim who'd been saved, but as a young woman who discovered that sacrifice and love were the same thing viewed from different angles. My mother was sick, she would say. I was scared. I did the only thing I knew how to do. I loved her. I made bracelets. I believed that showing up for the people we care about matters. She would pause, and her voice would drop to something almost sacred. Then a stranger named Marcus Webb taught me that promises don't expire, that the dead continue to speak through us, that when we honor the commitments made by those who came before, even if we never knew them, we become part of something bigger than ourselves. Zara's mother, sitting in the audience, would always cry at this part, because Keisha understood what her daughter was saying, that she herself had become part of the lineage, that by surviving, by thriving, by using her health to help others, she was honoring the promise made between 2 boys 40 years earlier. That family didn't end with biology, that loyalty transcended time, that the most profound acts of rebellion in a cynical world were simple. Remember, show up, love without calculation. In the Iron Cross clubhouse, David Johnson's photograph remained on the wall, unchanged, eternal, a reminder of the boy who'd taken a baseball bat and stood between violence and mercy. Below his image, the memorial continued to grow. Photos of families helped, letters from children whose lives had been altered by the fund, testimonies from parents who'd found hope when they'd forgotten it existed. And every November, on the anniversary of the day, Marcus bought 43 bracelets from an 11-year-old girl. At the corner market, the Iron Cross MC gathered to remember. They remembered David. They remembered the promise. They remembered Keisha learning to breathe again. They remembered Zara's hands, learning to create beauty from crisis. They remembered what it meant to be human in a world desperate for meaning. To keep your word, to honor the dead, to transform grief into grace. The promise had not just survived, it had multiplied across time, touching lives that Marcus and David could never have imagined, proving that loyalty was not weakness, but the most powerful force in existence. Every bracelet sold became a prayer. Every child helped became a testimony. Every family restored became proof that the world could work differently if enough people chose to remember that promises matter, that people matter, that the dead live on through our commitment to the living. This was the legacy. This was the promise. This was the Iron Cross way. Thank you for following Zara and Keisha's complete story, from that first day at the corner market to the moment when a girl's love for her mother became a movement that changed lives forever. Subscribe now and share this story with someone who needs to remember loyalty never expires, promises never die, and the smallest act of love can echo across generations. We'll see you in the next chapter.